I don't know how many people watching from LinkedIn, but I guess it's 6:05, so we will start. We're talking about the real cost of rebuilding an MVP twice, something that connected to the previous webinar that we discussed, and we will take off from where we left off. So yeah, the main idea that most startups don't expect to rebuild. However, many of them do for some reasons that we will discuss today, and we will discuss why it happened, how it happens, and the best way possible to avoid not rebuild at all, but unnecessary rebuild. And yeah, we will talk about this. I'll walk through the agenda for the webinar. However, I'll introduce myself first. So for people who didn't attend our webinars before, I'm Mina Morkos. I'm the product development advisor at DBB Software. I also act as a business development manager. And I have been in this business for over 5 years. I work with startups like Renovate, Chuchu, and Safe Mods, Place, and others. You can feel free to check those case studies on our website, and you'll learn more about each case specifically or in particular. Yeah, I work with startups, with founders, people with ideas who come to build an MVP or a POC or a product, or even some people who have system in place and they just want to scale it. So I meet a lot of people with different ideas, with different approaches, and yeah, that's about me. And we will discuss today those points: the rebuild moment, a very important point that we will come to and explain how do we come to this point and why it actually happens. What are the decisions that make it worse or lead to a rebuild, and what it really costs, because it's not just one thing, it's a few things, and they have different values and different consequences. And we will, of course, talk about the smarter MVP approach. What is the best way possible to do it, at least how we see it, or in a professional way. And the AI-assisted development part that we discussed last time already, so I will not spend much time on that. I'll try to keep it short and sweet, but when we get to it, I will mention a few things that are important. And a realistic roadmap for an MVP or for a product, and what is a logical way to go through all the steps and the processes. So this will be our agenda. At any time you have questions, you can shoot them in the chat. However, I'll answer them later towards the end. So yeah, let's get started. So the rebuild moments, and as you see here, a chart that shows you some spike or increase, and then at a sudden moment everything collapse, or you see a very sharp decrease. So the rebuild moment, think of it as a crucial moment, and it doesn't happen because somebody builds fast. It doesn't happen because the idea is bad. It doesn't happen because you built too little features or too many features. There are many decisions that contribute to this moment. Just think of that with a simple flow. You build something, it's working at a scale that's good for some people, it's fast for them, and so on. But then you start traction, and then you start adding things and features, start to slow down a little bit. You try to fix bugs, you create new bugs. Developers tell you, yeah, okay, I will fix it with one workaround or with an alternative. Sometimes they will tell you, okay, maybe we don't touch this part, but let's try with another method, another way. And you start seeing all those signs and signals that somebody will tell you, actually, we need a starting fresh, or we need a clean slate, or somebody will give it just straightforward and say, we need a rebuild. And this is the moment, a crucial moment. I will try, as the last time, to give kind of a story, analogy for all of these things, example, so we can easily understand it. But first, I will go through the slides. I'll try to make it short and sweet, not boring or anything, but I'll try my best to make it as easy as possible. So the point where your product stops moving forward and starts pulling you backward, this is the rebuild moment. It's very straightforward, of course, when we say like that, but I will give you the example later, and hopefully you'll understand how it connects all together. We can also read here another line: technical debt makes projects run over budget and miss deadlines. And also we will talk about this later when somebody has an idea and they just want to do it within their budget and they skip some steps or some planning, and what is the real cost of those decisions. Building before learning. And there are many things that I need to say here. Many people just come to us and say, and I mentioned this before, that I have a clear idea of what I want. And if they don't exactly learn and understand the documentation phase importance and understand what their product should have or not have or nice to have, this is the learning. And many people think of a MVP as a smaller product or a mini product, but that's not true. An MVP, it's a learning tool, and it gives you information that you need to adapt to and you need to work with. So you need to build something with knowledge and scalable for the future, not just build. And we also discussed this before: learning phase and development phase or building phase. And we talked about POC and the MVP. So if we look at sorry, do you hear me now? I think I lost connection for a moment. Yeah, I think now it's okay. Yeah. Okay, sorry. So yeah, if we look at this, it's kind of similar to when we discussed the POC and MVP a little bit, so not to get confused. But learning phase is to validate your problem or the idea, to test the demand, to confirm what users actually need. I will discuss this also later with the stories and examples. The building phase, it's commitment to this architecture. It's shipping more features, scaling infrastructure, having more users and raising and gaining traction. So if you think about this, a POC, it's something just very simple, very core to demonstrate. An MVP, it's a learning tool, learning phase, and then building phase, what comes after the MVP. So those are steps that we need to go through. If we think about it in only this slide, it's like two phases: the learning phase and the building phase. If you skip the first one, no matter what happens next or how fast you do or how many features you do, it becomes a little bit difficult and it becomes a little bit complicated. So I would give an analogy here that funny. So 9 women doesn't give you a child in a month. So you need to go through the 9 months to have a child. And this is the case here. You can skip one thing, everything else will be ruined. And here, if we have only 2 phases, so we need to take care very much of the first phase. We will discuss this with the examples, but we move on to the next one. The decisions that compound. So 3 decisions, and actually there are many, but let's say that the main 3 ones, the 3 main ones. Features before validations. I'll give you a very good example that I recently came across with a client. So somebody wanted to build a marketplace, and they came with the idea that this marketplace in a very specific niche. So it's not for everything, but it's for one specific niche. And we decided to work on documentation and scope documents. And they said, we need a chat on the marketplace. And I asked it, but why? Like we don't even know if the users need the chat right now. And they said, yeah, but it would be nice to have. And many people think like the more the merrier and the bigger the better, but this is not true when you come to building something. So we said, okay, if you want, so let's just weigh the options and see what's best. We explored a few options like API integration or like out of the box chats, and they're expensive in terms of user because they will charge you per user or enterprise plan. And then we said, okay, after a few months, when you have like thousands of users, you'll be paying a lot of money for this. So what if we build a custom chat, another option? It takes very long time and it takes a lot of work and of course money to build a custom chat. And they kept asking that not just a chat, I want it to be shared photos, shared voice messages, and even video sometimes for the products from different sides and for people to bargain the price. But we haven't even validated the idea of the marketplace if the users and the people need this kind of marketplace. And we're talking about the chat. So shipping features doesn't mean that your application or your product will be successful. And the more the merrier, the bigger the better doesn't work here, because you can build as many as you want, but what if later those people don't use the chats and they're just okay with sending an email every once in a while to ask about a photo of the product or to ask about changing the price? So some people think we need a complete product to get a real feedback, but that's not true. We need to validate the core idea and then we add to it. So yeah, as you see here, more code built on just assumptions that people will use the chat or people will need to send photos, just as an example. Speed over structure, this I see all the time. So many people come and say, I need to go to the market as soon as possible. And I want to do this before anyone else does. And because of this rush, you skip many things because like, yeah, let's just go to the market and do it later. Or let's go with that feature and we will add it later. But this is lack of planning and this will be a liability later. So every update gets slower and riskier, and every time you try to do something, you break another thing, because from the beginning there was no thinking about the product. There was no planning in a proper way, or you didn't lay the right foundation. So you prioritize the speed over structure. This is a huge mistake. So we discussed too many features, building or shipping features before validation, or speed over structure. And no product thinking. This is something very important. Tech without a strategy. How to explain this one? I will give you the example and you will understand, but I'm trying to explain it now. So developers, their job is to complete tasks. Not all of them, so let's not generalize. I apologize for that. So most of the developers, you give them a task at hand, they deal with it. But they do not think structure, they do not think, not all of them, about foundation. Who does that? It's a solution architect. It's somebody's job to do this. And this person, if he comes from the beginning, he understands where to put what and who works on what, and then it's easier. We'll talk about this later when we talk about modular design. You don't put everything in one place, you don't put everything in one logic, but you put them in sections so that when you change something in this section, it doesn't affect something else. Think about messaging, for example, and payment. If they are connected, no, you need to, you need to separate them so that when you change something in the chat, the payment is not affected, or other way around. So at the time, those aren't bad decisions. Having a chat is not a bad decision, but it is not the right time. They are just, they seem nice and they seem smart at the time, because also somebody wants to go to the market before somebody else does. It's good, but would you prioritize or take it over having a quality product and a good planning? So building something with just a team of freelancers or developers without somebody who actually laid the foundation and thought of the architecture doesn't really sound smart. But at the time you think like, maybe a team of developers good developers can deliver. And here the compound and those decisions that lead eventually to rebuild. And what actually it costs. So I will stop here for a moment and I will tell the story or the example that I wanted to give to make things clear. And then we'll talk about lost time, wasted budget, and momentum. So if you think last time we talked about the building and people want to move in and so on. So let's say that we built that building. Congratulations to everyone. And somebody from the 500 tenants decided to start a restaurant on the 0th floor of this building. And they thought here are 500 tenants. Let's say 40 of them, 50% of them will cook at home. 20% of them travel a lot. There are 30% left. Let's say 2% of them, for example, cook at home, or like they don't really eat out. So we are left with 10%. So he gathered some friends, in that case, let's say stakeholders or like some investors, and he said, I have an idea to open a restaurant. And they decided to open a restaurant. They found somebody, a good chef, somebody who knows how to cook, very good cook. But being a good cook doesn't mean you can run the restaurant. So the chef said, like, I need two with me in the kitchen. They had the kitchen, and he said, okay, I will cook here, and you serve to the dining room outside. And the owner decided to have like 10 tables in the dining room, couple of people to serve, and a couple of people in the kitchen. That's what the planning was for them in their mind, that we planned almost everything. We know what we want. And then the idea is not bad, actually. You opened a restaurant in a new complex. Some people will have their lunch during the lunch break for work, or somebody will come after work and have a light meal. They don't have time to cook and so on. And then you have 25, 50, which is 10% of the 500 tenants. They're coming to eat. They like the place and they start talking about it. And then you thought that nobody else will come from the building. However, some people came. Not only that, somebody from the back street heard about the place. It's nice. They decided to come and try. And the word spread, and you even started to have some phone calls, people ordering takeaway. And then you see that you have, instead of the initial 50 customers, you have 100, 150, 200. And now you start to have a few things. So you're ordering, and then the chef cannot handle all the orders because it's too many orders per day. So he tells you, okay, let's add a couple of extra staff in the kitchen. And you think, okay, let's also add a couple of tables in the dining room, in that corner, in this corner, and you move things around. It's easy, seems smart. But then people are bumping into each other in the dining room, because before there was no such thing in this corner and nobody pay attention to it, but now you hit each other. And in the kitchen, you start to have more issues. Orders are mixed up. Somebody gets pasta instead of pizza, and the chef cannot handle everything, not because he's a bad chef, it's just because the kitchen wasn't built to handle all of that. And then you come back to the chef and ask him, like, what do we do now? Like, we changed a few things and it's still not working. So the chef started giving you those signs again, like, we added some staff, fixed some bugs, added some features, and it's not working. Maybe we can ask the building next to us to expand their kitchen, but it doesn't work this way. Yes, now we are thinking about the rebuild. So you think, okay, if we're gonna do this, I will need to tell my clients and customers that we are not open for a couple of months, 3 months, 4 months, because we are whatever, rebranding, expanding, whatever you call it. And here is the problem. You are not only losing money because you want to expand the kitchen that initially wasn't built the right way for those customers. You are losing the money for the new kitchen. It's new but old, actually. You are losing the time because you need to wait 2-3 months until opening again. And you lost the momentum. After you had a successful business, many people coming to you asking about your meals and menu and so on. Now you have to tell them, sorry guys, we'll be closed for a few months. First of all, they will not wait for you. They will go to other restaurants. Second of all, you didn't lose only money, you lost time. And then when you talk to your partners or even your internal team and tell them, like, Okay, guys who work in the dining room, for example. I'm sorry, but I will have to lay you off for 3 months because we have to rebuild. You can come back after 3 months. Do you think that they will wait for you without the job? So this is just the story that I wanted to say. And we will go to one more slide. I will again come back to the story, but for now, what it actually cost. Exactly as I explained, lost time, because initially you had time to build this kitchen. It just wasn't built for this, and it didn't adapt to the customer's number. So you thought about something, but something else happened. And here where it comes also, when everything in one logic, you change something, everything else changes. The wasted budget, you spent whatever, 50K. I can actually move to the next slide and show you here the numbers, but let's stop here for a moment. So you built already the kitchen first time for whatever, 50K or 100K. And then you need to build it again. You'll not pay only 50K or 100K one more time. You'll add to the top of it because it's a bigger kitchen. So you'll add at least 20% more. So instead of the 100K that you paid initially, you'll pay another 120. This is not the problem. The biggest problem is the momentum. So after having active clients and customers coming to you every day, you might lose them because you will drop for 2-3 months until you reopen. And the emotional cost I already discussed when you tell your investors, your team members, and of course your users that you need some time to rebuild. So those numbers here is just to give you an idea about how much it might cost in terms of money and things. But for me, the previous slide was more informative because it's not just about money. For me personally, I think time is the most valuable currency in the world. If I spend time on something, it shows how much I'm interested in this something. And you can spend money as much as you want. You can always gain it back. But if you spend time, you cannot have it back. So we get back to this part, don't build bigger, build smarter. As I mentioned earlier, many people think that the more the merrier, so which is not true. Lean architecture, structure to grow without overbuilding. So it should be lean enough to pivot and be flexible, but not lean enough to be fragile and break when you have some scalability or some demand. So lean doesn't equal fragile. Validation-driven development, build only what proves demand. Yeah, the idea, as we said before, somebody wanted to build a chat, they don't even know they'll use the chat. The same for the restaurant. He put 1,000 meals on the menu. He doesn't even know that like half of those meals will not be used. So you could start with a small menu and see if people order all of them. You learn a little bit. What is your bestseller? What is something that people don't order? What is missing? Maybe some vegan dish or whatever. So you should have had this learning. This is the MVP, a learning tool. Building the kitchen, this is the modular design. So you had a kitchen that can handle 50 users. And you do everything in one place. Cleaning, preparing, cooking, and serving even. So the dishes come out of the kitchen ready. But what if it was built in a modular design to make it simple for everyone to understand? You don't put everything in one logic. You have the same kitchen, but you have internal sections. We wash the dishes at the end of the kitchen, the last quarter of the kitchen. The quarter to the last, we prepare peeling, cutting, chopping, mixing, so on and so forth. And the chef cooks in the third quarter. The quarter closer to the dining room is just to serve and to have some decorations and stuff. So if that was initially built right way, the kitchen could have handled many customers. And the kitchen was already big enough to handle many customers. But they just started because whatever, because they want to start earlier, or because initially they didn't think that they would grow and they would scale. So that's the idea and the example I wanted to give. So learn first, build on evidence, and stay flexible. Staying flexible doesn't mean that you be fragile. Again, it just means that you are lean and you can change and pivot and adapt to what you learn. So yeah, and also this is a very good one. Reducing technical debt can free engineers to spend up to 50% of their time on value generating work. So when everything is clean and everything is organized, people are actually free to be creative and to do valuable work. That's true also in the engineering world. Excuse me. Smart MVP with its risky MVP. Actually, we discussed this kind of last time, so I'll not go much through it. Also, we're hitting 30 minutes, so I don't want to make it long. But yeah, a risky MVP, something speed, something fast. I want to build now. And smart MVP, it's also fast. It's just the planning is important. Adaptability and expensive to change. So the one that it's just quick and is not adaptable, you will rebuild, it's expensive. The one that is initially designed to evolve, initially designed in a way that can handle and can scale, that's smarter. Foundation. There are ones that are built on assumptions we discussed already. They just assumed the chat is a very important feature. However, we don't know if people will use the chat or not. You could use something that it's basic, coming with AWS or whatever, that provides you a chat out of the box, not full features chat, but people can write messages. You get an email notification, just as an example. So you don't need to spend time and money on building a feature that maybe or maybe not people will use it. So building on evidence, it's way better, of course, and smarter. Investor readiness. Here, I would again mention the people who think it's a smaller product, an MVP. It is not a smaller product, it's a learning tool. A smaller product you might call the POC. It's good for demonstration to show somebody the core problem and how you solve it. But it is not exactly the MVP. The MVP is ready for production. And yeah, the result, of course, after 6 months, 3 months, whatever, how long it takes, somebody tells you we need to rebuild because it wasn't the right way to do things, or somebody can tell you, oh, now we can scale, we can add features. And I also wanted to mention here that having this mentality of thinking about POC, or sorry, MVP is a small product or a demo version, this always takes people to the wrong direction, because you want to build things as many as possible. At the same time, you want to pay as less as possible. And you're always between this triangle to quality, money, and timeline. And you play with one, you compensate with the other two. So we go to the next one. How AI helps. We discussed this before. I'll go through it very quickly. At least up until today, AI doesn't have a great architecture guidelines. Maybe it has a few things, but not everything. But when you have a senior architect, lead or engineer, they know what they do. He's a human being. He thinks about things and he can put logic together. So if you remember the example from the previous webinar, having a storage room and putting boxes, you can give a good prompt to the AI and tell, I want to do that, and it will do it for you, but it just puts everything in one room and that's all. And then if you want to rearrange this room full of boxes, you need to get those boxes out and put them all again, but with different sections and different organization. And that's what does the architect. He thinks about things beforehand, not just does it as you tell him to do it. No security framework. We discussed this before, that it is a responsibility to have security and compliance. And AI already shares data, which is already not against, but it's already liability. So those are things that can be dangerous to use AI for. However, AI can help if we just want to go from 0 to 0.3 or 0.5. We discussed this when we talked about the POC and MVP. And yeah, here it works for prototypes. So it is good as a starting point, and I encourage people to create something and try it. And they see things, they have a clickable prototype, and it's easier to explain to somebody what you want when you have visuals. But don't rely on it to be the final product. So yeah, here's the comparison. So we need somebody who's a senior architect to lay foundation, to have real product in the future. You can also do this all the time. You can just go build something with AI with your experience and just go to some agency or some even freelancer and tell him, I want you to build me the same, and compare what you built to what somebody with some knowledge built. And you will see a real difference. And we go to the next one. Realistic MVP roadmap. Yeah. So here, this one, it's what I talk with the client about all the time. When somebody comes to me with an idea, I try to walk them through this and try to explain to them why it's important. When you have something that it is one idea, one problem, and one core problem, and you want to validate it, so you go through a discovery, and you document everything. You have a kind of a scope document, you know what is in your scope. And then you go to the next phase, which is SDD. It's more technical. You have the ways how to do it, the how and what, and when as well, and the who will work on it. And then you go to the proof of concept, phase 2, which is, as we said, like sometimes it's 0.3, sometimes it's 0.5. So let's say it's 30% of the product for now. You can demonstrate the core functionality. You can validate it. It lives on a cloud infrastructure. You can show investors. You can show fundraisers, venture capitals, and so on. But then you go to the MVP development. If you skip one of those, the other one will be liability. I see some questions. 1 second. Okay. How do you build lean architecture? Okay, let me finish, and then I'll try to answer everything. But yeah, I see some questions here. Okay, so let's finish. There's not much left, and I'll try to answer everything. Just close this one here. So yeah, this is a very important thing also for people to understand. It is this timeline, what I'm explaining, like 2 business days, 1 week, 1 month. This is very important that it applies to a focused MVP with a defined core problem, clear documentation, single core user flow. So there are things that are very, very solid, not just an idea. And somebody comes to me and tell me, for example, I want to build another Facebook. And the first question would be like, why? Like, there is Facebook. And I don't know, it's successful. It's very nice that everybody wants to be successful, but what is the core problem that you are trying to solve? Even if you come and you have something that it's unique or different or nobody built, if it's just an idea, it's not enough. You need to document it properly. You need to lay foundation right, and you need to have a plan in place. So this time frame from a couple of business days to 1 month, it applies to what I just said, a very focused MVP. Maybe I can take you to or get you some POC in even less time, in a weekend, but that will lack what we discussed earlier. We'll lack the foundation, we'll lack the proper planning, and it will lead to rebuild in the end. Go to the next one. Yeah, okay. The last 3 slides are just easy. So this is best fit for non-technical founders, people who don't have a lot of info or understanding about the technical side. It's people preparing to validate or raise funding for outsourcing development and want people who want to avoid expensive mistakes and need speed without sacrificing feature scalability. So AI can help you with some things, as we discussed, but is not ideal for everything. And in that case, it's not ideal. Also, this webinar is not ideal for people looking only for cheapest option or complex enterprise builds without discovery. And by the way, I also dealt with those with those kind of clients or people lately, and people having projects without zero documentation, zero test written, and every time you fix something, a couple of things else broke, and yeah. So finally, if you have an idea, if you have a core problem that you are trying to solve and you would like to validate it, however, you need to have, as I mentioned, very clear and focused MVP idea. You have proper documentation, or at least some documentation. You can book your consultation with me and we can discuss what you have and how to approach and how to go from there. Evaluate your product, identify scalability or architecture risks. It will not be me, of course, I'm not a technical person, but we will collaborate with our tech leads to try to do that. And we'll walk you through how things should be done. And to determine if you need a discovery phase, a POC, or MVP. Again, it depends on what you have and what you need, what you're trying to achieve. The questions. So now we'll answer the questions. I just would like to let you know that all material will be sent to people who attended the webinar, the recording or the presentation. Yeah, thank you for listening. I will try to answer the questions real quick. So how do you build lean architecture? How to make sure it's not fragile, but an aligned best practice approach that worked already 1,000 times in small enterprises, companies, and is still as agile for startups to apply? Well, yeah, again, it is not a question that I can answer exactly. I'm not a technical person to tell you about how to build a lean architecture, but because we already dealt with this before, we already have proven methods and before, because it's built on best practices. So we have an idea on how to do that. Not me specifically, but our tech leads. They ask the right questions. They know what is needed or not. They know how to prioritize features or logic. And this is not something that I can lead you on, but if you have an idea, the person who put the question, if you have something that you can show and we can discuss with our tech leads, please feel free to reach out. And what does reducing technical debt mean? Reducing technical debt, it's those decisions that earlier sound like a smart, and you fix a bug here, you fix a bug there, but it's all just to avoid the rebuild. That you give a task to the developer and they just fix the task, but they don't think about why this issue happened initially. What was the reason behind this issue? And they actually fixed it. It's their job and they did it. But then you come back and you say, oh, there are a couple of issues, other issues that appeared, or you broke something while you were doing this. This is regression, testing regression. And it's because everything lives in one logic. You change something, the whole logic or the whole thing changes. This is the modular design I discussed before. If initially everything was built in sections or in blocks, you could change whatever you want inside this block without affecting something else. 1 second. Yeah. So that's reducing technical debt. It's trying as much as possible to follow the plan, that you don't have those kind of issues and you just work around them. And then at some point, everybody's afraid to touch any piece of code. And they tell you like, oh, let's not go there. Let's not go touch that. Let's not do this. Let's work around it or choose alternative methods. And that's what makes technical debt. Next question. How to build an MVP as quick and as qualitative as possible to present a prototype towards validated ICP? Would you recommend services like Lovable or okay, actually yes, we discussed this before, and I already kind of answered this question. I encourage you guys to build something with Lovable or with Bubble. However, you cannot fully rely on this to be your product. I will give you an example that recently I talked to a client who they have 6,000 active users, but their data lives in Bubble. And right now they want to migrate from Bubble to something else. Bubble taking a lot of money from them. And now after a few talks and after a few calls, they said like, okay, we either rebuild or we just keep living inside Bubble because we cannot stop right now. So you can build a POC to show people and to identify ICP, but it's not exactly the right way to go all the way to a product. And we discussed this during the webinar. So I would recommend people to work, of course, with AI and try to build something, but it is cheaper, it's faster. But let's also be honest. Everything that's cheap and fast is not the best quality ever, huh? So that's why people came up with the brands and the quality of the brand, and people paying like $2,000 for a suit or whatever shoes. It's because of the quality. What kind of platform do you use to build the MVP fast and easy? We do not have actually an AI platform. We use AI assisted and driven. But we have our own platform, which we discussed before, pre-built solution, which is ready block code that we can put together. So think of it as ready walls, not building the wall brick by brick. But since it's our platform, it's open source, by the way. If you want to use it, you can use it. It's on GitHub. So pre-built solution. And right now, we are also adapting the idea of working with AI. So we have a lot of AI-assisted work, but it is always supervised and done by our tech leads and our solution architects. So we don't just feed it some prompt and say, like, build me an MVP. No, we have a proper documentation. We have the right architecture. And then those technical guys, those tech leads who have 12 years or 15 years of technical experience, because they know what to do and how to utilize the AI, they can come up with other results than somebody like me, for example, who doesn't know coding, build it. So we can still use AI. We can use Claude, we can use Lovable, or we can use whatever Bubble. But the outcome will be different from when I use it to our tech lead, for example. So yeah, any other questions? No, that was the last one. Anybody else? No? Well, yeah, I guess that's all. You can contact us by scanning the QR code, and you can also reach out to me on LinkedIn, and we will be in touch, and we will send all the material of the webinar. Hopefully it was useful, and yeah, thank you very much. See you soon.